Have you ever sat in the same room with your family and still felt completely alone? Because that was my childhood. That was my reality. From as far back as I can remember, my brother was always the center of attention. Every achievement of his was celebrated like a festival. Every mistake was excused. Every failure was blamed on someone else. And me? I was the quiet one. The responsible one. The one who was expected to understand. Every single time. When guests came over, my parents proudly talked about my brother's future, his career, his dreams, his potential. When they talked about me, it was usually followed by silence, or a sentence like, "She's independent, she'll manage." At first, I thought that meant they trusted me. Later, I realized it meant they had stopped caring. Growing up, I learned not to ask for things. Not toys, not clothes, not praise. Whenever I needed something, the answer was always the same. Wait, later. Your brother needs it more. So I waited, and learned to survive without expecting anything. School was my escape. I studied hard not because anyone encouraged me, but because it was the only thing that made me feel valuable. When I scored well, my teachers praised me. When I came home and shared the news, my mother smiled briefly and said, "That's nice. Did your brother eat?" That sentence hurt more than any punishment. As we grew older, the difference became more obvious. My parents paid for my brother's education without question. When he changed majors, they supported him. When he dropped out for a year, they said he was finding himself. When it was my turn, they said, "You're smart, you can handle it yourself." So I did. I worked part-time, I studied at night, I skipped outings. I learned budgeting before I learned joy. I became strong too early, not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. Still, I never complained. I told myself that one day when I became successful, they would finally see me. I was wrong. The turning point came on an ordinary afternoon. My parents asked me to come home early because they wanted to discuss something important. My heart raced the entire way. A part of me hoped, foolishly, that this was the moment they would acknowledge me. When I arrived, my brother was already there, sitting comfortably, smiling like he owned the place. That's when my father spoke. "We've decided to transfer the family house to your brother." The words felt unreal, like I had misheard them. I laughed nervously and said, "Oh, okay, but why are you telling me?" My mother answered without hesitation, "Because you should know. You're part of the family." I swallowed and asked the question that had been burning inside me. Why him? There was a pause, a heavy one. Then my mother said something that changed how I saw everything. "Because he's a man, he needs security. You'll get married one day." That was it. Years of silence, years of effort, years of sacrifice, reduced to one sentence. I didn't cry, I didn't shout, I didn't argue. I simply nodded. They took my silence as acceptance. What they didn't know was that something inside me had finally shut down, permanently. From that day on, I stopped trying to be seen. I moved out quietly. I focused entirely on myself. I poured everything into the small business I had been building on the side. Something I had never mentioned to my family, because honestly, they never asked. It wasn't easy. There were nights I slept on the office floor. Days I questioned whether I was wasting my life. But every time doubt crept in, I remembered that meeting, that sentence, that dismissal, and it fueled me. My business grew slowly. One client became two, two became 10, 10 became contracts I never imagined I'd land. I learned negotiation. I learned leadership. I learned how to fail without breaking. all while my family continued life as if I barely existed. Months passed. Then came the invitation. A big family gathering, celebration, relatives from out of town. My parents insisted I come. My brother apparently wanted to show off the house. I almost said no, but something told me it was time. That evening the house was full of noise and laughter. My brother walked around like a king, proudly explaining renovations he hadn't paid for. My parents beamed beside him. When I entered, conversations paused briefly, then resumed. Others barely noticed. At dinner, property became the main topic. My uncle turned to me and asked, "So, what are you doing these days?" Before my parents could answer for me like they always did, I spoke. "I run a company," I said calmly. My brother smirked. "A company? Like a small thing?" I smiled. "I own 3 properties now," I continued, "and last month I signed a deal worth more than this house." Silence. Forks stopped mid-air. Glasses froze halfway to lips. My mother stared at me like she didn't recognize her own daughter. My father's face slowly drained of color. My brother laughed, once. Then he saw my face. I took out my phone and showed the documents, the contracts, the proof. No anger, just truth. My father finally spoke, his voice shaking. Why didn't you ever tell us?" I looked at him and said the only honest answer I had. "You never asked." That moment wasn't loud, but it was powerful. Some relatives congratulated me. Some avoided eye contact. My parents sat in silence, realizing they had spent years investing in the wrong assumptions. Later that night, my mother tried to hug me. She said she was proud. I hugged her back, but something had changed. I didn't feel the need to prove myself anymore. I had already won. Not against my brother, not against my parents, but against the version of myself that once begged to be seen. I didn't take their house. I didn't ask for apology. I didn't demand fairness. I simply walked away, fulfilled. Because the strongest revenge isn't humiliation. It's success built so quietly that when it finally speaks, it leaves everyone speechless. And for the first time in my life, I chose myself.